Hello and welcome to Scale by Design. Today we are joined by Brett Lindenberg. Brett, welcome to the show.
Hey, James. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Of course. I'm really pumped to speak with you today. And before we jump into it, would you mind sharing with everybody a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. My name is Brett Lindenberg. I'm the founder and CEO of Mindstamp. We are an interactive video platform. Started a couple companies as well in the past, but really focused on this one right now. Excited to be here.
For sure. So your company does interactive video through a platform. I was hoping you could tell us a little bit about what your company does. And then if you could also share with us a little bit about what interactive video is, because it's kind of a new term that you just taught to me a few minutes ago. So I want to make sure that everybody in the audience understands exactly what you all do and applications of it and so on and so forth.
Yeah, absolutely. So interactive video is a broad term for turning any video into a two-way interactive experience. Compared to a traditional linear video where you watch from front to back, you're not controlling the content. Interactive video gives the viewers a chance to interact with the content. That could be whether it's clicking something in the video, clicking a button, a hotspot, asking a question in the video. Generally, it engages the viewer and makes them part of the experience rather than just watching from front to back and letting the brand control how they do the path.
Okay, really cool. So what are it sounded like there's also several applications of this. Like there's obviously the customer centric application from maybe online when when consumers or companies, I guess, are considering a product or service. But I think you mentioned some other applications as well. What are some other ways that companies are leveraging this?
Yeah, so interactive video, like I said, it's super broad and therefore it's really applicable to pretty much anything, right? As soon as you cross that chasm of making things into a two-way experience, your mind kind of starts turning and everything can be changed from that. So obviously training and education, that's a huge one, right? Rather than watching an hour-long lecture and having the little simple quiz after, you can put those questions right in the video. You can jump them back in the content if they don't get them right, change them to a different area based on their answer, so on and so forth. Marketing, right? You want these videos to be engaging with your brand. You don't want to have them sitting there trying to click through. In the age of TikTok, it's really hard to keep somebody's attention, So if you can give them something to engage with, something to let them feel like they're owning the experience, things just resonate a lot more. We also do a lot of personalization, right? So you can take these videos and you send them out. You can have a button that says, "Hey, Brett, would you like to buy this?" Right? Just a really simple way to get people more engaged. Same thing with sales. Corporate communications, instead of taking that webinar and putting it on YouTube, put it on Mindstamp, add chapters to it, add different links to resources and things are being talked about. So interactive video really applies across the board, whether it's internal communications, customer communications, employee training, education, anything.
So one of the things you were mentioning is that HubSpot recently wrote about this. What was their take on it and what were they talking about?
Yeah, so HubSpot mentioned interactive video for the first time, at least formally, in last month. Interactive video is really having its moment right now. COVID obviously was really good for interactive video when we all have to stay at home, stay away from each other. You want an engaging, interactive experience rather than just watching that video and taking the quiz after, right? So HubSpot listed interactive video as a must-use tool for marketers that are coming up now, at least to get familiar with. We've definitely seen a bump after they mentioned that as well. But they said, here's this new technology. It transforms the way you can do your marketing. Again, rather than just watch the video, let them be a part of the experience. And on top of that, you've got a ton of data that's coming out of these videos as well, right? I can see that you watched the video. I can see that you clicked that you're interested in this or answered that your company size is over 50 people, right? So not only are you sharing the content yourself, you're creating brand loyalty and engagement, as well as collecting that data on the back end, kickoff automations, workflows, whatever it is.
Where are you currently seeing the most application in terms of like SMB, mid-market, enterprise? Where are you seeing the most traction there?
It's all over the board, honestly, but a lot of the SMB and kind of mid-market, right? So we're pretty fairly split right now between education and training. That's a use case we absolutely nail, right? If you want to know that somebody watched the video, answer the questions correctly, get a report for their certification or whatnot, nailed it, easy, right? Marketing, there's a lot more that goes on. That's the other half is marketing and sales. There's a little bit more that goes on there, like what people are trying to do, whether that's create a choose your own adventure experience where you can let people discover your products or company on its own, or if you want to send out a personalized video that encourages them to take an action. So we have clients all the way from, mom and pop stores paying a little bit per month, the big enterprises that are really leveraging this for all their internal communications, universities. So different companies, different sizes, different uses. It just applies to everybody.
For sure. Is there any data surrounding, like in terms of conversion rates, using this as a marketing solution to where you could kind of A/B test against static web pages versus interactive video, and how that impacts conversion rates for, B2B, B2C companies?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the proof is in the pudding, right? We can't hide the effectiveness when we give you the full analytics of everybody that's coming. When we drive traffic to your checkout page, right? You see that it's coming from the Mindstamp video. So we definitely, our clients definitely look to see that bump, just, in terms of their own analytics, but also at the very least, if they don't take that action that you want, say you're trying to drive e-commerce sales, right? They don't click that buy now button in the video. You at least have that data that they watched this part of the video, that they potentially paused at that section. So you can at least follow up and continue that chain, rather than a static video that you don't know who watched it. You don't know what they saw, what they thought. There's a number of, even if they don't take that exact action you want, you can still get them to take mini actions, right? Answering a simple question or skipping to another part of the video. So obviously our clients really compare the data from, their old landing page, their new landing page, and see the huge bump. But also if they don't, they at least have a couple of small wins to take back home with them as well.
For sure. That makes a lot of sense. And so what does the space look like right now? Is it a rapidly expanding industry? Are there, a lot of players kind of flooding the space? I know you mentioned the industry is still young, right? And growing. So what are you seeing out there in terms of the competitive landscape?
Yeah, so it's super hot right now. Interactive video has been around for a long time, right? There are people talking about interactive video in like 2005, 2000, maybe 2010. But a lot of people kind of cobble together their own solutions, right? You play a video clip, a YouTube video on the page, and then have your own custom HTML that says, do you like this? Yes or no, right? And when they click that, loads a whole new page with a whole new video. So interactive video in its most bare sense at that point, right? But recently, I'd say like in the last 5 years, that technology has really helped us catch up and start to deliver kind of amazing experiences for everybody, right? In 2010, nobody was watching that interactive video on a mobile phone. That just didn't happen in the era of Flash and whatnot. And now that the technology has caught up, and so that we're able to create, experiences across the board that work on all devices, that use really advanced and, powerful technical components to deliver these amazing brand experiences. There's not a ton of people coming into the space, but there are a lot of interactive video platforms out there. Everybody's kind of got their own take on it, right? It kind of depends on where they got the idea and kind of what they started building towards. They're all doing great. We're doing great. There's been a couple acquisitions. Actually, one of the biggest ones is Vimeo just bought an interactive video platform called Wirewax. Wirewax is a really top tier interactive video platform, more so on the agency model, where they kind of help you create a very expensive and beautiful interactive video. We're a self-serve platform. We do special projects, but we've really focused on, we say we separate on price, performance, and usability, right? We're affordable. We have the kind of most robust and expansive set of features, so you can basically do anything under the sun that you need. But also we're really easy to use, right? We're not this heavy video timeline editor where you got to be splicing little clips and aligning stuff. We make everything one click, drag and drop, resize, place on. So we really focus on keeping things simple and letting anybody, whether you're that single, training manager at a company, a mom and pop store trying to boost sales, or, the COO of an enterprise company that wants to design training themselves, anybody can create that interactive video experience. So there's a lot of companies, there's been a couple acquisitions, but generally this is kind of the year of interactive video, where more and more brands are saying, we really need to use this. How do we use this? Let's go.
Yeah, that's really cool. And one of the things that we were talking about before we started the show was that you've made the choice to be bootstrapped, at least for now. And I'm curious to kind of get your philosophy on that, and why you've decided to go that path. My company is bootstrapped as well. However, I think it's probably a little different because we are a services company. So it's just a little bit different than obviously having a platform. But yeah, curious to get to understand your strategy and why being bootstrapped at this point in time is really important.
Yeah. Not looking to start a flame war here. There's obviously a lot of discussion around bootstrap versus VC. I should say I don't hate VC and not necessarily won't take VC in the future. But for us, it comes down to back to like dedication to our customers, right? This is a growing industry. People are still trying to figure out what they want to do, how they want to incorporate this into their strategy, what it's going to look like in a year from now. And at this point, taking funding puts you on that path you have to have this certain outcome, right? And you have to grow your team, you have to hire more, spend more money. And as we've seen, we're a very customer-driven company, and that's worked really well for us so far. And getting on that alternative path and overextending, we don't feel would be the right move right now. If we do feel that differently in the future, certainly not opposed to taking that, especially if it means better outcomes for our customers. But right now we're just, things are going well, and we're really focused on iterating closely with our customers and making things better without that necessary, need to grow at all costs.
So how does your team handle the customer feedback loop? Is this you directly having regular conversations with customers? Is this sending out email kind of surveys? I mean, what is that process? Could you walk us through how you do that?
Yeah. All the above. But it kind of goes back to what we talked about in the first part is what is interactive video, the education piece around interactive video. A lot of people that come have heard of interactive video, but they don't know what it is. They don't know what they can do, and they don't necessarily know what they want to do just yet until they come to us. So the best thing that we can do is offer, very gracious support and points of contact in the very beginning, hopping on with any customer that needs help, helping them plan their experience, showing them the ins and outs of the platform so that they're good to go and, unleashed. But from that, naturally, we get to hear exactly what they want to do, where our platform falls short, where it succeeds, what's super easy, what's not. And generally, if we hear something a couple of times and it makes sense broadly on the platform, that's something that we should take into consideration, and we'll usually follow through on it.
Yeah, so that's actually a point that I wanted to dive in a little bit further, and you did sort of just answer it, but maybe we could get a little deeper. How do you segment customer feedback and actually decide what feature set to roll out versus, okay, you receive some feedback, but maybe because of your understanding the industry or the outcomes that you produce for customers, that's not the right thing to build, or it's not going to necessarily help drive sales or retention? Or, I mean, like, how can you walk us through a little bit more about like in depth into that decision making in terms of taking customer feedback and turning it into product features?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it all boils down to, can this be implemented in a way that makes sense across the board for multiple customers? Have we heard it from multiple customers? Is this a one-off, very specific feature for somebody trying to achieve a unique outcome, right? Our goal and our job is to continually improve the platform, bring more value to our customers, give them more tools to achieve their end goals. So does this request help us do that? If so, then we'll definitely consider it based on obviously, difficulty, busyness, whatnot. But generally, a customer giving us feedback is the best gift we can ask for, right? They're telling us exactly what they want in earnest. And at the same time, I'm sure this is the same in your business. You've got a couple customers that want everything under the sun and usually aren't the best customers, right? They're looking to they want the video to do a 360 on every third rainbow of the month. And you're just like, that doesn't really apply to, anybody else in the world at this point. So it's just a function of how broadly this would apply, how much value it would create, and kind of the multiplier of that is kind of the priority that we give it.
For sure. And from a demand perspective, what is high level, and I guess like just provide any insight you're comfortable sharing. You don't have to share everything you don't want to, but from a demand perspective, what is kind of a little bit of the high level strategy, channels you're leveraging, being a bootstrapped organization, obviously having to be very smart about where you're allocating time, resources in general. Where are you kind of seeing success in this post-COVID world where, people are adapting your solution a little bit more? Where are you seeing the most success?
Yeah. So, as a bootstrap company, we focus on the king, which is SEO. SEO is the investment that pays dividends for a long time to come, especially in an industry like interactive video where people are still figuring things out. They're not going to Google, how to interactive video, or they might, but they're rather going to Google their goal, how to add button to video, ask a question in video, just investments in those areas, immediately presenting them with an explanation of how it can be done, what it can be used for, right? That's really paid off for us. I think if you Google like how to add button to video, Mindstamp will be the first result. That page continually drives signups and conversions for us all the time. We also do AdWords, right? It's a pretty competitive space. You need to appear at some point, not necessarily every time, but you do have to run some ads. We have an affiliate program. That interactive video is such a novel thing to a lot of people. To most people when they first come to it, that they almost have a, almost religious, reaction to it, where it's, oh my gosh, I didn't know this is possible. I have to tell everybody I know, right? Everybody could use this. If you're doing this in a training, you create a really sick training video really quick. You're like, oh, I want to tell everybody. So our affiliate program drives sales as well. We get to give back to our customers as they give back to us as well. A little bit of social stuff, mostly trying to post. We're lucky that we have a really shareable product, right? It's not like we have a unique security code package that we're trying to promote. It's like, hey, look, I can take this hotspot and make it do this when I click it. So it almost sells itself, but we just try to keep the pace up and give people something to look at.
Yeah, for sure. And you do podcasts too.
Yeah. I do podcasts too.
Stuff like this, right? Cool. It's interesting. This is more so on the services side, but I've been talking to a lot of founder CEOs lately that are still seeing a fair amount of success in email marketing outbound. Is that a channel that you're currently exploring, or is that something you're kind of holding off on and investing in other stuff?
Yeah, we do some outbound, especially to our base for people that have indicated interest. We've also run some cold email campaigns. We're not opposed to doing that further, but we found that the results just weren't spectacular. There's a lot of immediate interest, but you're targeting even if they fit your demographic, they're a cold lead, right? Especially they might not have heard of interactive video ever, and they might not have that drive to get over the line and say, okay, let me learn this tool. Let me think about how I create content for it, et cetera, et cetera. So we'd get a lot of interest. They'd show up to the demo and then be like, this is awesome. Let me think about it. Whereas somebody that comes in with high intention, that if they found us, they get on the demo, they say, wow, this is exactly what I need. They have a plan in their head, right? As opposed to somebody that you're saying, hey, come check this out. And like, that's really cool. Let me think about what to do. But, email is king. I definitely respect outbound email, and we'd do it if we could, guarantee some, higher performant results at this time.
Yeah,
but definitely.
For sure. I think for whatever reason in services, it seems to be really strong, because I didn't receive that feedback from a lot of product or platform CEOs. Not that they don't do it. It was just more so, I spoke with a couple CEOs of services companies, probably, mid 7-figure services companies, right? So still young and growing quickly, that were basically just saying like email's their primary channel.
Yeah.
Like it's the only channel that's repeatedly delivering results, which is kind of weird because that wasn't the case for us. But given that feedback, and also Nick's experience on this call in marketing, doing outbound, like we've, for the past 6 months, we've been doing outbound and we're seeing results with email. We're still seeing overall, probably it's actually a pretty big driver of revenue. But historically, referral, word of mouth, stuff like that was driving a lot of business for us. We're playing with Google Ads too right now. We just started, so we've gotten, I think, a few leads in, but I don't think we've actually done a conversion yet. So we're still kind of waiting to see how that plays out for us.
Yeah. Google Ads is its own beast, man. You got to, it's almost a full-time job itself. You can easily waste a lot of money or put your money to work. But I'm curious. So you said word of mouth and referrals is kind of how you get most of your business.
Yeah. I mean, before, like pre-Nick, it's like pre-Nick and after Nick, right? Before Nick, after Nick. And so we brought him on in January, I think. And right before we brought him on as soon as we hit 3 million ARR. I called Nick and made him an offer like the same day, because that's right when we had the margin to do so. And awesome. So, yeah, so like before that, like we weren't, it was pretty much 100% inbound. So referral, word of mouth, like, customer would, come back to us or go to a new company or talk with somebody in their network or send us an introduction. That was really driving, I think, like 70% of our business. And then I think around 25% was high intent. So I think we had started investing in sites like G2, building up reviews. Nick really blew the lid off that and helped us accelerate it. If I remember correctly, we had started that. So we were getting some of that in the early days. Like when I initially started the company, before we were a scale company, it was more of like a lifestyle business. I had done some email marketing, which helped us sign up several clients and build relationships. And then that kind of fell off a cliff. And I'm not really sure why. I think probably Google just got like, it started to understand what we were doing, and just like our open rates just like completely plummeted. So, we kind of stopped doing that in 2019-20 until, Nick just joined us, and now we're, getting started again. But we do a lot of LinkedIn content, right? Podcasts. We're producing a lot of content, trying to produce a lot of value. And that's also a big driver of business for us too. So I'd say still overall primary driver revenue would probably be referral, word of mouth, just content, LinkedIn posting. I think podcast is going to continuously become bigger and bigger as we build more momentum with the shows, for sure. So we have several channels that are pulling in revenue right now. And the challenge is balancing between, okay, should we focus on opening up more channels, or should we double down on a couple channels, right? And trying to find like the time and the balance there, which is, I think, kind of a very like consistent conversation I'm having with Nick. It's like, all right, like, we're spending all this time executing on several channels. How do we feel about that? Like, where are the bottlenecks? Where do we not have time to optimize on which channels? And how do we think about prioritizing which channels to optimize first? Stuff like that.
It's the entrepreneur's whole battle, man. Where to spend your time, what battles to pick, how deep to go. But I'd say, you're in a much better spot than the opposite, right? If 100% of your business was coming from cold email and Google suddenly shut that off, you're in real problem. But if you've got, most of your business coming through referral and word of mouth, that means happy customers, that means reviews, that means more organic, cost-free acquisition. And then all those other channels are open to you in the future, right? You can only double that by, trying to get a couple new channels. But referral, word of mouth, and kind of organic search, I think, are the key, the holy grails of scaling.
For sure. And one thing that we're starting to look into more now is more targeted outbound. I mean, right now it's email. I think we're doing like in-mail outreach too, through a tool called Connected. And so that's helping us, get a little bit higher volume. But we also use Connected for podcasts too, to reach out to guests. So it's kind of a combination. I think we split our Connected efforts between podcasts and new potential customers, stuff like that. Awesome. But when we have the margin, I mean, I really want to bring in like a very experienced enterprise salesperson, because one of the thing with inbound, it's like a lot of our customers are like the startups early growth stage, which we crush. I mean, we've worked with over 150 at this point in time over the past 7 years. But we want to win more like, big mid-market enterprise deals. Mm-hmm. And because we don't have a lot of customers in that space, we don't get a lot of referral into that business, right? So some of the bigger deals we've closed are actually due to email marketing, that driven higher ARR deals for us. But yeah, we're looking for like, that next level of, okay, we want the 7 to 8 figure, ARR contracts coming in. And that's where it's like inbound starts to, it feels like if that's our sole strategy, it's a little bit limiting. Mm-hmm. If we want those bigger contracts. So that's like, okay, that's another bootstrap problem, right? It's like, you want to start to build out the enterprise solution. If you decide to go that path on a shoestring budget, it's like, okay, we have a limited amount of margin. We're profitable. We're doing well. So that's cool. But what do we want to do with that? Like, do we want to spend, X number of hundreds of thousands on a, very senior enterprise person or strategy? And when do we do that? Right. At what revenue level, at what margin does that make sense? Right.
Yeah. Moving up market's tough. I mean, the word of mouth still would apply if you can get a couple word of mouth contacts up high, but I definitely understand the problem. Do you have a lot of, difficulty with, you said you service a lot of startups. Do you have a lot of problems with kind of churn, due to, startup changing directions, going out of business? becoming too big for you, or anything like that related to startups?
Yeah, I mean, apparently our churn is pretty good for our industry. And once we stop recording, I'm happy to tell you exactly what it is. But yeah, I mean, apparently it's pretty competitive for our space. I mean, one of our primary value propositions is flexibility, right? So it's like some of that is inherent to the business model that we have, right? Because we kind of like what my company does is companies borrow recruiters from us. So it's like on a subscription basis, right? So we kind of sit in the middle of like contingent agencies and internal recruiters,
Mm-hmm.
where it's like we can provide more flexibility and much higher quality than contingent partners, right? But we're a lot more flexible than in-house solutions, and we can also bring expertise to the table, and you can kind of scale us up or down based on hiring demands, right?
Yeah. That demand's never going to go away. Good industry to be in. How'd you get started in
Yeah, I mean,
recruiting?
I started on the contingent side, so just contingent recruiting agency, meaning like fee based, right? So like somebody would have an account executive opening, and we fill it and get 20 grand fee or whatever it was, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I was doing that, but that's like very transactional, and also I really don't like contingent business models. You're not pulling in any money until you make a placement. It's very transactional. It's not necessarily as repeatable. It's hard to forecast and make great investments in your business. And so I did that for a few years, and at first I was actually traveling a lot, so it was more of kind of a lifestyle business. And then I really started getting serious about scale, and kind of understood that I really don't want to scale a contingent business. I don't want to scale a business where my expenses are recurring but my revenue isn't. It
Yep.
just sounds like a bad time at scale. Like I just don't want to do that. So that was when we started to think about, okay, how can we create the recurring revenue model? At the time, I didn't even know what RPO was. I was like, are we doing something new? Like, is this even, like I had no idea. But we basically started out with like this fractional RPO service, trying to bring the value of, full, like RPO basically just means like, it's a fancy way of saying you can borrow recruiters from us. And RPO typically means like you have 4 or more recruiters dedicated to a business. And so our thought process is like, well, let's try to break into earlier stage startups and early stage growth stage companies by offering a kind of like a fractional solution. So we can bring that, traditionally more so enterprise mid-market value to SMBs. And then we've just kind of, now that we've done a good job capturing that market. Now we're focused on, landing the larger scale projects, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of been the evolution over the past several years.
Cool. Unrelated to kind of your business specifically, but I think there's definitely been a rise in kind of like the niche job board space.
Yeah.
Have you seen that or interacted with that at all? You kind of see job boards spinning up for every niche thing under the sun now. Like farm jobs. Obviously, it doesn't really apply to you, but something like farm jobs or crypto jobs or just remote jobs. Obviously, that's a little bit more general. But how do you think about that? Do you try to interface with those at all, or have you considered spinning something up like that?
Yeah, I have not considered it. I think honestly, like even though I'm a services company, I can create a more valuable company and services than just like creating another job board.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, people at this point are still the primary driver of value, particularly for talent acquisition. So there are technologies that are really effective. Job boards are helpful, I suppose, but like 90% of the candidates that we place for product SaaS companies come from outbound sourcing.
Okay. Yeah.
Still, I mean, and we're leveraging LinkedIn Recruiter. The ATS that we recommend, applicant tracking system, we recommend is Greenhouse, right? We use a tool with our clients. We use it in-house for us personally. So everybody on our team has training for that. But yeah, job boards, like particularly the old school ones, like Indeed, Monster, all that stuff, it's like just garbage. I mean, some of that like ZipRecruiter and like Clearance Jobs might work for cleared talent specifically in the DC area, but for tech talent, like it's just not going to work, right? And then yeah, like sometimes we'll have some luck with some of the smaller job boards, but typically unless it's like a client requests it, we're just going to use LinkedIn. We know it works. We know how to craft outbound messages. We have senior recruiters that are essentially like senior salespeople, right? And they know how to engage with top talent and convert that top talent.
Yeah, totally. So one cool one started by a friend of mine, actually, Lynn Tai. She started a company, you might have heard of it, called Key Values. and it's a job board that focuses pretty much specifically on company values and what people, what life is like there, as opposed to the actual, obviously the work matters, but really the entry point is kind of, what do you care about? Do you care about working from home? Do you care about equality within the company? Do you care about any of these kind of social values that matter to you as a tech worker? I'm curious, with that, like, how have you seen kind of job preferences or applicant preferences, applicant processes change in the last 2 years through COVID and kind of all the other social change that we're going through? Are you noticing a difference in, how things are going?
Yeah, I think there's definitely a place for a job board like that more so focuses on values. I mean, definitely we're seeing a bigger emphasis being placed on people want to work somewhere that aligns with their values. And what's really interesting about being a CEO right now is that within tech, at least, there's almost an expectation that you take a stance.
Mm-hmm.
And things that are not just like value driven. Well, I guess value driven, but also like political. And it's like walking a very fine line, it seems sometimes, right? Between being empathetic and showing support, but not getting too off track or down in the weeds on certain things. So definitely, to answer your question, like, yes, people are focused a lot more on values, and just specifically in our roles as CEOs, like it can be, you have to be thoughtful, right? About how you kind of engage and respond. And, that's actually, I was on a call with my CEO peer group, and initially, we were going to discuss, what were we going to, I guess, like the economy, like state of the economy. And this was like the same week that Roe versus Wade came out. And for the full hour, we were just like, all right, what's an appropriate way to respond? How do we show support? How do we do all of these things? Like, how do we communicate in a way that's, supportive, and at the same time, enables people to feel like they're able to kind of, stay focused, and these types of things. How do we strike that right balance? Right. So yes, like, we're seeing a much bigger emphasis on values in the workplace, and people want to work in a company that is aligned. The other thing that I'm seeing is we are seeing people put a much bigger emphasis on how well does their professional, their job integrate with their personal life. They're valuing flexibility. So all the stuff, we always hear about in terms of like remote, minimum PTO policies are becoming a lot bigger, right? Like, people are tired of getting sold this like BS 4-week PTO policy, but then like the company has capacity, doesn't do capacity planning, and they just have way too much work on their plate to take time off without it impacting performance. Or there's some kind of weird culture where it doesn't actually want people to take time off. So we're seeing that, just everything surrounding flexibility, right? I think is, certain benefits are, there's a lot of people now that are adamant about remote being directly correlated to inclusion, right? Like, there might be people that can't make it into the office for whatever reason. And so there's, a big a value that a lot of people have now is like, look, if you're truly going to build a diverse and inclusive culture, you need to offer these progressive benefits surrounding flexibility and integration of professional and personal life in order to enable that inclusivity that you say is important to you. Mm-hmm. So we're seeing a lot of that too.
Yeah, I'm sure you're in a unique spot to see a lot of, there's just been so much cultural and social and work change in the last 2 years that I'm sure you guys are kind of like a pipeline and are catching things from both directions, from the applicants, from the companies themselves. Like you said, you got to be thoughtful. You have to, I think that pressure to take a stance is waning a little bit, right? We've seen kind of like the infamous Coinbase, Brian Armstrong letter. Are you familiar with that?
I know like Coinbase and like offers rescinded and stuff like that, but I'm not familiar with what's the letter?
So this was like 18 months ago at this point. But he basically wrote an open letter to the company saying like, hey, look, guys, we are a mission-driven company. Like, our mission is to, enable financial access for people around the world. Our mission is not necessarily everybody's individual social cause. And therefore, when you're at work, we are going to relentlessly chase our mission. Outside of work, we're not telling you, what you can or cannot do, or what we do or do not support or condone, et cetera. But while you're at work, like, you need to be basically focused on our mission, because the mission is huge and long and takes every ounce of effort. That shook the waters a lot back then. I think it would still shake the waters now, but more and more companies are kind of trending towards that of you just can't keep up with, taking one stance. There's inevitably people that are going to be unhappy with it or happy with it, right? The only stance that you can really take safely is the mission. And Brian Armstrong basically ended that letter being like, if this doesn't work with you, like Coinbase probably isn't the right place for you. Here's a really overly generous severance package. I think like 8% of the company or something like that took it, maybe a little bit smaller, maybe a couple hundred. But I think that's turning out to be Coinbase is kind of having some trouble right now, but I think long-term that was a great decision, right? Get people that really want to be there at the company, be mission driven. It's just an infinitely foggy, pool of causes that you can kind of bring into the workplace like that. We all have our own personal causes that we can be, passionate about, but it's just, if you're trying to run a business, right, you have to be focused on the mission and you have to put all your energy towards that mission.
For sure. And I agree with you. I mean, I think like, honestly, I kind of push back on the taking a stance thing and more so thinking about like the most important thing is giving empathy when people are going through something or processing something that's important to them, and creating that environment where they know that, you care about them and you'll do what you can. But I think that's where it really needs to stop, because as you said, we're here to do our job, right? And we have a life outside of work, and that, and that's where that's where we should really be focusing on those things. And I do agree with that perspective. And I think too, that feeds into, I was doing a podcast on my other show, Talent Acquisition Trends and Strategies. And one of the leaders we brought on had a really interesting take. He said, people aren't overworked right now. They're overwhelmed. Right. Like they're looking at everything that's going on in the world. It's like going from like mass shootings to stuff in politics to, I mean, it's just like, you got Ukraine, you got all inflation, and just people are like constantly getting these headlines bombarded, even, and I think it's hard too for recruiters too, or anybody who's on LinkedIn a lot, because it's like, okay, I'm going to work. Let me shut off all the social media and all this other stuff. You go onto LinkedIn and then it's like the headline section is just like layoffs, inflation, mass shooting, like just right in your face when you're just trying to do your job. And so a lot of people, again, are just like very overwhelmed. So I think to the extent where it's like, show empathy, give people a space for like, let people know that they can, do what they need to do to be healthy and put their mental health first and all that good stuff. And then, I think a lot of people actually appreciate not just like sitting on topics, because they're getting bombarded enough from like every possible angle on this stuff. So to the extent you can create like a workspace where people can just not feel overwhelmed all the time, I think is actually really valuable and something that, people do appreciate.
100%, man. I couldn't agree more. We're not meant to be exposed to this constant stream of anxiety inducing information at all hours of the day from all corners of the world. Right. And a lot of people, I think, recently have kind of trained themselves to handle it better, but it's still overwhelming. We all still get overwhelmed. And I completely agree with not overworked, but overwhelmed. Right. And it's also hard to feel like your work matters sometimes when there's all these pressing issues that you see when you're scrolling your feed, when you're on socials, whatever. It makes it hard to focus on work. And I think that people do appreciate that this is where we focus on the mission. Your objective is clear when you're here, right? We have one goal, we're working towards it, we're all working together. And that counteracts that kind of isolated, scared feeling that we get from this, incredible amount of stimuli that we're getting on a daily basis. You don't have to make a decision. Some companies, you would obviously make a decision whether the goal is good or bad. But if you've joined the company and you feel confident that you're doing good work towards a mission, that's, I think, the best counteractance to, scrolling Twitter and seeing something terrible happen and having nothing you can do about it, right? And at least in the immediate moment, you can long-term plan to help out in that cause, but giving somebody the ability to, do good work, honest work with a team that cares about you towards a mission that you believe is good, that's the best antidote for what we see today.
Yeah, man, that's very well said. I completely agree. And by the way, really enjoying this conversation. We're coming up on time here. So I just wanted to say thank you for joining us today. and sharing your insights and telling us a little bit about interactive video. And then we kind of, just ended up talking about a totally different topic, which is really cool and something that I like doing, just seeing where the conversation naturally goes. So Brett, thank you for joining us. And before we jump off, could you tell everybody where to find you if they want to follow you online or learn more about your company?
Yeah, absolutely, man. I've really enjoyed the conversation. I love riffing, talk a little companies, talk a little world, all that kind of stuff. A company name is Mindstamp. You can find us at mindstamp.io, mindstamp.io. All our socials are use Mindstamp. We actually have a scale 50 code for all the first 50 customers. If anybody's listening to this, 50% off your first 3 months on our platform. Enter the code scale 50. You can find me at brett@mindstamp.io. Feel free to send me an email. We can get you set up or just talk shop.
Cool. Well, thank you, Brett. And for everybody tuning in, thanks so much. And we'll see you next time.
Appreciate it.